The boy Jesus. He was no ordinary child. He was said to have spoken to his mother Mary as an infant, declaring his divine mission. She had no reason to doubt him, as she was witness to his miraculously conceived birth. When honored by the wise men who journeyed from India to worship him, many angels appeared to pay homage to the baby Jesus, one of which had previously taken the form of the star which had guided the wise men on their journey from the east. At their request, his mother Mary gave them one of the swaddling cloths in which Jesus was wrapped. On their return to their own country, kings and others of royal blood inquired of the wise men as to what they had witnessed, for they were aware the stars had not only predicted the coming of a Savior, but also had guided the traveler's journey to the stable in Bethlehem. As was their custom, the wise men tried to burn the swaddling cloth in a sacred fire in order to be certain of the divinity of the baby Jesus. As expected, the cloth remained intact and untouched by the fire. This confirmed their beliefs that a prophet was born in Bethlehem, and the wise men conferred upon him the name of Saint Issa. News of his birth spread through all of India, as did the hope that he would one day visit their country, where he was so deeply revered. On the 40th day after his birth, Jesus was presented to God at the temple in Jerusalem. Angels were present in abundance to adore him, as if to form a king's guard around him. Before long, King Herod ordered the death of all infant male children in Bethlehem, being as he feared the prophecy of the birth of a new and powerful king. God warned Joseph to flee into Egypt with Mary and Jesus. Many miracles took place during this period of Jesus' childhood, and according to the Bible, if all the miracles were accounted for that he performed in his lifetime, all the books in the world would not be enough to contain them. A high priest was cured of a mysterious malady simply by being in Jesus' presence. A bride who had been struck dumb was healed as she held the baby Jesus lovingly in her arms. Lepers were cured by pouring the water over their bodies that had been used to bathe Jesus. It was very unusual for Mary and Joseph to have a spare moment, as it became more evident to the populace that the child Jesus possessed miraculous powers. He represented hope and salvation to all who were afflicted, and even as a young child, his compassionate nature was evident. After 3 years, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph returned to Israel, and the miracles became more frequent as Jesus increased in stature. He would form sparrows from mud, and he gave them life and bade them fly away. On separate occasions, Jesus saved 3 children from certain death, who would later play a large part in his life, they being Judas, Simon, and his brother James. Many varied healings, too many to recount, continued to occur, as well as the many resurrections of those who suffered accidental or premature deaths. He regularly restored people to the living, just as later in his life he would restore Lazarus from the dead. Joseph found his son's extraordinary powers to be of great assistance in the carpenter shop, for when an error occurred and the erroneous dimensions of something Joseph had built needed correcting, Jesus need only stretch out his hands, and it would be as it was intended to be. After 2 years of crafting a throne for the ruler of Jerusalem, the seat was found to be much smaller than the appointed measure. Being aware of the king's anger at his father Joseph, Jesus directed him to pull on one side while he pulled on the other. The throne obliged by assuming the proper dimensions. All who saw were astonished. This was as elementary for Jesus to do as later it would be for him to multiply the loaves and the fishes and to change water into wine. Schooling was an exercise in futility for his instructors, as Jesus possessed all knowledge intuitively. Therefore he had no need of books or teachers. In his 12th year he was missing for 3 days. He was eventually found in the temple, conversing with the learned scholars and elders. One can only imagine the awe and reverence Jesus inspired in them as he expressed the profound wisdom of his Father in heaven. A certain astronomer who was present inquired if he had ever studied astronomy. He replied with information regarding the divinely orchestrated perfection of the celestial bodies that no man had yet discovered. When asked of his knowledge of medicine, he informed them of the inherent power of nature when infused with divine will. He instructed them as to how the soul, the Son of God, gives life to the body temple, the Son of Man, and how it is instrumental in healing to the degree trust and devotion to God the Father are demonstrated, thereby releasing the soul's beneficial Christ-healing rays. At some point he assured his worried mother that he was about his Father's business, which bore witness to the nature of his earthly manifestation. Jesus' simple message was the renunciation of earthly bonds coupled with the right motives and right living in order to activate the blissful, enlightening, and rejuvenating flow of Christ consciousness, which emanates from God the Father when one is open and receptive. That consciousness which is immanent in and transcendent of its creation. In order to repay the visit of the wise men who came to worship him as an infant, and in part to avoid customary betrothal at the age of 13, Jesus would travel to India. He resided in various cities there and spent the remaining years in the Himalayas of Tibet before returning to Israel to begin his ministry. The New Testament is curiously silent about the life of Jesus for a period of 18 years. He is spoken of as a boy of 12, teaching in the temple, and is next spoken of as he is about to be baptized by John the Baptist at the age of 30. Through all of these years away from his homeland, he was actively engaged in doing the work of his Father. Ancient records exist in India and Tibet, which are similar in scope and depth to our New Testament, and which document the high esteem in which he was held. He was remembered as Saint Issa, as this was the name that had been given him by the wise men. Jesus was incarnated as a Savior, and was recognized as such in India and Tibet almost universally, but he was scorned and rejected, for the most part, at the hands of his own people. He journeyed to the East, which was a mecca of spirituality for thousands of years prior to his arrival. There were many holy men and saints who were extremely spiritually evolved, yet they did not approach his level of God realization. Jesus possessed the pure Christ consciousness of God the Father from the moment of his conception. In India and Tibet, he was sought out by advanced devotees who possessed the necessary receptivity to his liberating expression of God realization. He had the ability to elevate their consciousnesses to the point where they could experience the cessation of a dualistic experience apart from God. It was the fulfillment of their deepest desires and expectations to be able to bask in the presence of one whose destiny it was to set in motion the eventual spiritual transformation of humanity. Jesus could have lived out his life peacefully and without incident in Tibet or India, while being held in the high esteem which was accorded to him as a prophet of God. In his homeland, the need for a reformation of thought was great, and the conditions were right to accomplish that which was necessary to bring legendary status to himself and his teachings. He returned to demonstrate the redeeming value of turn the other cheek and love thy neighbor as thyself, as he set an example that was to become the essence of Christianity. In spite of all the periodically recurring distortions at the hands of the various religious hierarchies who have unknowingly interpreted the teachings of Jesus in a manner that conformed to the limits of their understanding, the essence of the fundamental truths remained intact. Christianity continues to expand exponentially as it brings relief and comfort to a long-suffering humanity. Jesus set in motion the process of raising the consciousness of civilization, and in doing so, he became one of the central figures of the human race. His divinely initiated mission of unparalleled compassion had been fulfilled.